Good evening. My name is Denise Tindelar, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Museum of Ventura County. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all tonight in participating in our first Dia de los Muertos program for 2020. This program is made possible through the generous support of E.J. Harrison and Sons and the Santa Paula Latino Town Hall. In years past, we've enjoyed in-person programs at both of our museums located in Ventura and Santa Paula. And this year, due to COVID-19, we will provide a blend of live and virtual programming. Tonight's program was developed by our presenter to educate and inform families of the importance of this time of remembrance and celebration. Roberto Vargas, who has served on the museum's Latino Advisory Committee for many years, is here with over 40 years experience in facilitating Day of the Dead ceremonies for families and communities throughout California. He is also an organizational psychologist, community organizer, leadership trainer, and family success coach who has several clients throughout the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Sweden. After teaching at UC Berkeley, he returned to Santa Paula to care for his mother, and now, fortunately for us, he resides in Ventura. Welcome, Roberto.
Hello, everybody. Just much gratitude for your presence. I know that we've had so much work to do, and work a lot of times seems harder because of the Zoom reality we live in. Not the Zoom reality, the COVID reality. It just takes more time to be a parent, takes more time to be a student, takes more time to be a laborer. So I totally appreciate that you're with us this evening, because this evening is about looking at Dia de los Muertos, Days of the Dead, as a healing practice. Because in a lot of ways, that's what this tradition is about. It's a tradition for nurturing, facilitating healing. However, before we start, I just want, again, thank you all for being present. Some of you are here from Texas, from Oregon, from Iowa, from the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Livermore. Locally, of course, we have Santa Paula, Camarillo, Ventura, Oxnard, Santa Maria. Here, just thank you for being present. Before we began, several folks sent me emails, said, Roberto, I'm running from one meeting to another. So I know some of you are a little bit of hectic space, so I want to just ground us a little bit for our experience. So grounding means to kind of get present. And so I'm going to ask you all to just kind of close your eyes and maybe just roll your shoulders, kind of get your body flexible, maybe bend side to side a little bit, but just kind of move your body, because I want you really present this next hour. So move the body a little bit. Okay, now I'd like you just well, you know what? I like to begin in our traditional way. When we have a gathering that's significant, where we want everyone to be fully present with their body, with their intelligence and their spirit, we begin with a sage burning. We burn white sage. And when we burn white sage, we say this time is so significant. We want to be fully present, and we also want the ancestors to be with us. So here, I'm going to light a little bit of this white sage. Okay. Now I feel a lot of you can see the smoke. In our tradition, you just take some of that smoke to your person. And this is the creator's breath. You're being blessed by the creator. And so I'm going to ask you just to close your eyes for a moment. Words for the creator. Aho, aho, aho. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for this beautiful evening. Thank you for every one of us who at this present time are creating a council of learners and teachers, because what we learn, we also teach to others. So thank you very much for this network that's come together to do learning about Days of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. May this evening be one of learning and inspiration, of some laughter, of some joy, and may we all be able to take something with us to help us in our lives, so we can be the mommy, the papi, the brother, the sister, the supervisor, the manager, the director, the organizer that we need to be to create a better world for all people. So again, we give thanks for this evening and thanks for this moment now. Aho, thank you. Okay, good folks, so here, we're here to learn about Dia de los Muertos. And here's the plan. First of all, let me just share what our objectives are for this evening. Great, okay, here. One is to share about Dia de los Muertos as a healing tradition. As I shared with you, oftentimes people think of this time as like something akin to Halloween, and it's not. In our indigenous tradition, it was a season. It was many weeks. It was like 2 months where you take time to honor Mother Earth, honor life, and honor the spirit ones. So tonight I want to share with you about Dia de los Muertos in that context, as a tradition of healing, a season of remembrance and honoring. Second, I want to present how to build a family altar and facilitate an honoring circle to honor our spirit ones, our deceased loved ones and our ancestors. So I want all of you to have an idea of how can I use this practice to bring my friends and family together to do true honoring of folks that we love. And third, I want to create an evening of joy and of love energy, because we need so much more of that in this time. The epidemic's happening, Black Lives matters, and people continue to mobilize. A lot is going on right now in our community and country, and it's important that we be in a good space to be the loving person we need to be for our families and each other. So that's our objectives. And the way we're gonna do this is first I'm gonna share a little bit about Days of the Dead, and I'm here in my office. I'm in front of my office ofrenda or altar. And so I'm gonna begin here sharing a little bit about the significance of Days of the Dead. Then I want to take you on a PowerPoint trip. We're going to go to Oaxaca and to the Bay Area, California, so you can see how Days of the Dead is practiced in different places. Then we're going to come back and hear from the altar. I'm going to share just part of the magic that occurs when you create an altar. And then from here, we're going to walk into my living room, and you're going to see our home altar. And then from there, we'll talk a little bit about how you create an altar. Then we'll come back here and share more about how you can facilitate family gatherings for you and your close ones. So, and then after that, some time for a little bit of Q&A from questions and answers or responses. So that's our game plan. So first of all, why is Days of the Dead so wonderful? Again, it's a season for honoring our loved ones who passed. Think about the folks that you love who passed on. You still think about them. You still feel for them. You still would love to be in conversation with them. Sometimes you are in conversation with them. During this time, Tiempo de los Muertos, it's about acknowledging those loved ones who passed and believing that they come to visit us and to be close to us during this period so we can deepen our conversation with them. So it's a time of, again, honoring those that have passed. And we honor them by telling stories about them, about, what we remember about them, or what was some of their best qualities. Because in the Pura Vida tradition, Pura Vida means for life, love, and evolutionary change. In the Pura Vida tradition, we remember the lessons they left us, we remember what they modeled, and we try to take that forward. We try to take the best forward of the folks we love. So Dia de los Muertos is about that honoring. It's about bringing family together to talk story. And that's needed so very much because right now, just given our realities with the cell phones, we just spend too much time on games and phones and not enough time with each other. I'm also a therapist, family therapist, and I know the importance of bringing families together to have conversations. With Dia de los Muertos, it's an opportunity to bring family, extended family together to do sharing. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you do that now and how you do it now given the virus. Sometimes we're going to have to do it vis-a-vis Zoom. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So again, Days of the Dead is a tradition for honoring, respecting, and it's also, again, a tradition for honoring Mother Earth and life. So it's about us kind of stopping time for a little bit to remember how grateful we are for all that we have, for all those folks who've been part of our lives, and then invite them to be with us. So that's Dia de los Muertos, season for honoring our loved ones. Before I talk about, how to set up an altar and how to have a family ceremony, I want to make sure we all have a good feeling for Days of the Dead. So I want to take you on this trip to, again, the Bay Area up to Oakland and then down to Oaxaca, where I have a number of photographs of the celebration of Days of the Dead. So bear with me as I bring up my PowerPoint to share with you this little travel we're going to do together. Okay, Dia de los Muertos, Days of the Dead, a season for honoring life, Mother Earth, and our spirit ones. Here was a gathering we had with a number of young folks a number of years ago. Every year when we set up an altar, we decide who we're going to invite over this year. And this year we thought, hey, let's invite the young folks. But what I want to really focus on is just sharing with you how we celebrate the tradition, beginning in Mexico and then here. So in Mexico, we celebrate with home altars and gatherings at the cemetery. So here, this is a family that I spent time with in Oaxaca. We're in front of their family altar. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And here again is a cemetery. During this period, folks will go to the cemetery a couple of days ahead of time and adorn it, make it beautiful, because we're inviting the spirit ones to be with us. And so folks will go out to the cemetery and prepare their spaces. You'll see just so many flowers as a way of extending an invite to the spirits to come and visit. And so that's why during this period, you'll just see a lot of vendors selling their flowers. Flor de Muertos and marigolds, they're very popular flowers during this period. But depending on where you go in Mexico, they utilize different flowers. And also, as you go to different parts of Mexico, there's different traditions in terms of how you set up your altar. In Oaxaca, the tradition is very much developing arches. So many of the altars will have these arches where people will lace the different flowers. So again, people develop altars dependent upon their local tradition. So here on the left, you see the family altar we had at our house in Castro Valley, California. And actually we had it in the center like this because we envision having circles where we would stand around and we do sharing. So that here you might say it's a Chicano, California altar. Next we have another altar from Oaxaca. And there in the altar from Oaxaca, you see the pan de muertos, bread for the dead. And you'll see a lot of fruits and a lot of fruits. I mean, what we often put on the altar are items that our loved ones would enjoy when they come to visit. So in this case here, the family members are inviting, hey, they enjoy some of those bananas, some of those mangoes, and some of those nueces, some of those nuts. So again, people develop their altar depending on their local tradition. And whether you're poor or middle class, you develop an altar for the departed. As you see in the bottom slide, this is the home of this family. Very, very humble family. However, for the period, they developed their altar. In this way, they are remembering their parents and their grandparents who struggled in their way to ensure a good life or a better life for them. So it's about, again, remembering those dear ones in our lives. An altar could be in a shelf, as you can see on the photo in the top, right-hand corner. So it's a shelf here. It's a very humble home. This other altar, it's in a living room, but you can see it's much more elaborate. They kind of just cover the whole wall with flor de muertos, flower of the dead. So again, folks will develop their altar depending on their own home tradition. And again, for many, it's not just the altar at home, it's taking some time to go down the cemetery to visit the spaces where we have loved ones buried. And as you can see here, there it's a parade going to the cemetery on typically on November 1st and 2nd. And as people gather in the cemeteries, it's like witnessing dozens and dozens and dozens of family reunions, because families are coming out together to see each other, to share words with their departed ones. And so folks hire musicians to play the favorite song of their father, their mother, and other people just come together to socialize and connect. It's a time of celebrating life. Life and death, there's a cycle here. So it's respecting life, celebrating life, and you do it with your music and you do it with your food. So during this time, from the day on to the evening, people are playing music, picnicking, eating, and sharing. Here, Doña Octubre here is, I caught her as she was just sitting down, just chatting with her husband who passed. She was just there talking with him and telling him about the kids and what's going on and how much she missed him and how great it would be if he were still to be here. And you're chatting with the spirits. You're chatting with the folks you love. And then again, during this period, you're having home gatherings, and for a lot of folks, it begins by going down to the mercados doing shopping for your pan de muertos, the bread they'll use for this period, and the chocolate that you'll use, and the flowers, and all these good things as part of the celebration. And so for a lot of us, it's a time to collect muertitos for our altar, because oftentimes it's nice to find a muerto, kind of a toy character, a skeleton that kind of reflects somebody we want to remember. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then altars are made to honor specific loved ones, like our children, parents, grandparents, and others. Here in this altar here, you see the gentleman playing he's playing an instrument and a bass. Anyways, that here was the father of this family. And so he's prominent in their altar every year. In the photograph in the bottom, here's my mama Cuca, my grandmother, and I'll share a little bit about her later. And so that altar was dedicated to her. So again, we think about, during this period, we think about who do we want to remember, and we dedicate the altar to them. And oftentimes, again, it's a family affair. People get together, create the altar together. It's sort of like decorating the Christmas tree. And family come together. If this family, the young folks who were in school in Mexico City, they took all-night bus just to come home and be with family and share with family, because it's about sharing time together in the kitchen and at the altar, in this case, making chocolate and talking story. It's a time to go and just visit different people and hear about their altar space. Here, this woman, this senora up in the top left-hand corner, this is her bedroom altar. I went to visit them and I saw the family altar, but she says, Ben, you got to share the altar for my husband. And so, half her bedroom is this altar space, and I just heard stories about her as a youngster, and it was just so beautiful. So we continue the tradition in the United States. A number of us know it's important, so we've continued the tradition of having family gatherings, making the altar, bringing family friends together to share about our loved ones. And as we developed our altars, again, we bring out mementos that remind us of them. Sometimes we bring various food items that they would love. This altar here is recognizing my father, and for him, he loved walnuts. The bag of walnuts are there, and he also loved honey on his walnuts, and that's there too. So you kind of put out things that they remember. And also, I'm a Chicano. I'm a Mexican-American connected to my Indian culture. And oftentimes in our tradition, we'll have different statements about who you should vote for, because in a way, we're a community of struggle and justice. Voting is important. Dia de los Muertos happens in October, November. So, we'll have signs like here, this few years back, yes on Proposition 30. And presently in my altar, I'll have the endorsements of who to vote for this year. And so during the time we have gatherings, we invite people to share to talk about the different people that they want to remember. In particular, we'll say, share their name, just why you love them, and what was one of their gifts to you. Some consejos, some advice, some values that they live, some practice they live, and this is the kind of sharing that we do. At this ceremony, my young nephew here was he still needed to connect with his dad. His dad would pass. His dad passed too early, and so oftentimes Dia de los Muertos is a time for healing, because we sometimes have those conversations we hadn't had yet, or we should have had with our brother, father, sister, good friend. So it's a time to kind of do that healing. And children are involved. Children tell stories too. Children remember their grandparents, remember sometimes their pets. A number of times I've gone to different schools to facilitate Days of Dead ceremonies with young children, and they're invited to bring a photo of someone that they'd like to honor during this period, and half the photos will be of pets, or they could draw a picture of them. So a number of children draw a picture of their goldfish. So it's a good tradition to kind of help young people kind of connect with the cycle of their life and their death. Here is young Maya sharing about her grandfather and what she remembered about her grandfather. So for a lot of us, our altars remain up through November, because it's like you're creating a family reunion of all those folks you love. Their photos are up. It feels great for you to see them all. And I believe it feels great for them to be in company of each other. So we have the altars up, and sometimes all the way up to Thanksgiving, because when people come visit Thanksgiving, it's like, hey, you know what? Here, let's go and talk to grandpa, grandma, and some of the other people we want to talk to. And often here we had a ceremony at the house, an honoring circle. We talk story about the folks we want to remember, and then we end with a uni circle, because you bring family together. It's a great opportunity to hear each other, but ultimately to also to extend some love to each other. That often happens by just bringing people together and sharing some circle time. So in many ways, from my family to your family, I want to invite you to find your way to celebrate Days of the Dead. And that's why I committed myself to do this sharing with you, so you know more about the tradition and decide how you're going to do your own Days of the Dead practice. Okay, now, so here, I'd like to share with you a little bit of my altar here, so you get a sense of the power of the medicine of the altar. As I share with you, the altar typically has the photographs of the folks you would like to remember, to honor. So it always has my dad. My dad's there. However, you also oftentimes look for mementos that remind you of the folk you want to remember. This here is my father's hook. My father was a longshoreman. He worked unloading cargo off ships here in Port Hueneme, up south in San Pedro. And so every day I remember him as a little kid. He'd come home and this would be his hook, and he'd leave his hook there in the side table. And I bring this out to talk story about my dad, and also was to remind my children, my nephews and nieces, that we're from working class roots. We're working class family. And it's important to stay committed to being and struggling for justice for working class people. So you might take out the memento to help you tell the story of your loved one. Another person's often or always on my altar is my brother Jack. And I'll share more about him. But he was an artist. And so here, this muerto here kind of just helps bring his spirit present. This year, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is an altar. Already I've done several Days of Dead ceremonies, and a number of people have spoke so eloquently about her because she was a role model to a lot of women, but also to a lot of activist folks. My good compadre, Joel Garcia, gosh, he had so many good words to share about her because he being an attorney, he saw her as an attorney that was a role model to him. And so it's an opportunity for us to recognize those folks that are our heroes and heroines. Because Ruth Bader Ginsburg here, you know, every year, Cesar Chavez has been with us. And so it's an opportunity to also share with the youngsters, these are our heroes. These are the folks we want to emulate. We want to take forward their practices. This is also a tradition or a time to remember Mother Earth. And so oftentimes I like to put her up there front and center. So these are items that go onto the altar, items that help us remember what's important to us. Also this year, George Floyd. Hey, there's just too many folks of color who have been outright murdered by virtue of the fact that they're just a person of color. And some people have no idea about this. I've been Latino. Before I was 18 years old, I was stopped by police officers 3 times with guns on me. And one of the reasons was I had Long Beach State decal on my car, and they thought I must have stole the car. So, you know, a lot is happening in our society now to raise consciousness of how we need to be more respectful and loving of each other. And oftentimes in our altar, part of the intent is to recognize those folks in our family who've been about love, recognize how they were loving, lift that up, and recognize others. So if it's this time, what I'd like to do is actually take you to our living room and show you our home altar. And there I'll also share a little bit about how you create an altar, an ofrenda. So I'm going to be checking out here, and I'll be walking over to our living room and share there about our family altar. So I'll see you in just a moment.
So just a quick note, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, and Roberto will answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Roberto here again, and now I have my Dia de los Muertos t-shirt from the Oakland Museum, celebrating the 25th anniversary of Dia de los Muertos celebrations there in Oakland. And over the years, we come to a point where our last year, there were 7,000 folks present. So anyways, I want to bring you here to our living room. This is our living room, and the altar's here in front now. However, typically this is our fireplace. And this is one of our favorite spaces. One, because it has the paintings of our daughter, Andrea, who many of you know because you know her. She oftentimes is shown at the Ventura Museum. So this makes this also a favorite space for us. But anyways, going back here to our altar space, this is where we'll gather. We'll have the altar here. We'll invite friends and family over. We'll sit around and we'll talk story. And we'll take turns. Well, before that, as our friends come over, we invite them to place on the altar, you know, who it is that they want to remember. So we try to create enough space here for other people to bring also their photographs. So in a lot of ways, an altar space is like the Christmas tree space. You know, once you put up that Christmas tree during the season, you kind of like to come to it and kind of feel the lights, and maybe if you have favorite ornaments, just kind of remember them and the year that you purchased them or they came to you. Well, it's that way a lot of ways with the altar. You create this space, it's a space of beauty, and it just kind of draws you. So during the season, I find myself coming here to do my morning Tai Chi. And when I come to do my Tai Chi, it allows me to reconnect with my Tío Poncho. My Uncle Poncho, he was like a father to me in a lot of ways, because my father worked almost 24/7, and so he didn't have time to take us places. my Theo would be there for us all the time, and always smiling, always radiating love. So to see him, it just reminds me of the need I have to remember smile. We should need to smile at each other. So again, here, whoever's on the altar kind of brings you those memories. So it helps you be a better person because you're remembering the best of them. Also, in our altar space, we have my brother Jack. Um, I was the oldest, he was the second oldest, and as we were growing up, we both carried a lot of responsibility for our family because our dad wasn't there. And so he passed on too soon. He passed on 15 years ago, and he was an artist. And well, he passed on 20 years ago plus.
25.
But 25 years ago. But 15 years ago, the museum in Oakland was going to honor him by showing a number of his paintings. It was during Días de los Muertos. And so we dedicated a large altar there at the museum for him. And a number of folks, about, gosh, almost a dozen folks helped me in constructing this paper mache representation of Jack. And so Jack's been part of our altar every year since, and he's been part of dozens of community celebrations because people always say, hey, bring your brother Jack. So anyways, here in the altar, again, typical to altar spaces is flowers. Some are those that you create, and marigolds that are real. You also have a number of candles. The idea of the candles is you want the altar lit so the spirits can find the altar. And down here in the bottom here we've got pan de muerto. So again, you know, they travel, the spirits travel to arrive, and minimally you want to have a little bit of bread for them. And oftentimes you'll have different drinks for folks, their favorite drink. So this is our family altar space. But it doesn't start out this way. It starts out much more humble. So that's what I want to show you now is how you actually can construct your altar space. It begins with kind of doing a little bit of search in your closet, in your garage, and you might find something like a small little table. Okay, so here's your table, that'll be your base. Then you go looking around for boxes. So here, got a few boxes here. And so with these boxes here, I'm now creating a platform. We got 3 levels. Then you need to find an altar cloth. In this case, it'd be a sarape. However, gosh, there's so many different items you can find around your house that would serve really great as your altar cloth. And usually I find when I'm creating altars, it's good to have stick pins, because if you're gonna try to organize your altar so that your altar cloth kind of bends where it's supposed to bend, you might need some stick pins or some tape. But here you go, that quick, and we have the base for the altar. Now to this space, you bring those photographs of those people you might want to remember. Then you might bring some Days of Dead figures to kind of give it more spirit, more feeling. And here, this one here is of a teacher, and it reminds us of our good friend Roberto Vargas, who was a teacher. So to that space, you'll also bring some flowers, your candle, and you decorate it with the idea of creating a space of beauty. Some folks have said, look, it has to be 2 levels, 3 levels, 5 levels. What's most important is that you're creating a space of beauty for the folks that you love. So just make it pretty, and then decorate it as you please. So now you have an idea of what an altar could ultimately look like and how you create it. We're gonna go back to my office altar so I can share with you how you organize a family gathering. So I'll see you back in the office.
Where's Denise?
Okay, back in the office. Here, um, here, I'd love to know so far, what do you love or like about the Days of the Day tradition that you've seen, either from the slideshow or from the altar space? So just any likes, the idea of family gatherings or going to the cemeteries, or just the idea of just, you know, recognizing those people that are important to you. So anything you can write up in the chat would be great. So here, we're back to how do you have the family gathering? Well, in a lot of ways, it begins with first thinking, who is it that I want to honor and remember this year? Um, you know, your aunt, your uncle that passed away, a good friend that passed away, or again, maybe you just think, you know what, I don't have anyone that passed away, but I definitely want to honor those folks who passed because of the virus, or I definitely want to honor those first responders who have been are sacrificing their life, so that a lot of us could heal, you know, at the hospitals and all that. So think about who you want to honor, and then given that, who might I want to invite over to experience this altar this year? You know, again, this year because of COVID, it's going to be a small gathering because we've got to be virus safe. It's important to be virus safe. So it may be a small gathering. However, who do I want to invite? And so you think about that as you're thinking about the altar you want to create. And I'll share a little bit more about that, and particularly maybe how to do this vis-a-vis Zoom. But for right now, let me share with you a couple of important things to think about as you have your gathering. First of all, as I share with you, I'm sharing the por vida tradition for altar making. And por vida tradition is you make the altar and you have the gathering with a purpose. And the purpose is to live more love and respect. Por vida, for life, love, and positive change. So that's your intent. So you need to then serve as a facilitator. Facilitator comes from the word facil in Latin and Spanish, which means easy. Your job as a facilitator is to make the gathering for Days of the Dead easy. So many of you that are part of this program, because you're into learning about this, I imagine you'll be the facilitator for your Days of the Dead gathering. So think about, again, your altar space, create the altar, and then who do I want to invite? And then extend the invitation to them. Maybe because of the virus time, you're just going to invite your brother's family over. It's going to be two small families who've been taking care of each other. So you invite them, and you have your altar set up, and you say, hey, look, bring whoever else you'd want to honor. So then people will bring photos of who they want to honor. And this is really important, is I'm going to share a little story here about my Mama Cuca. It's my grandmother. I didn't grow up with the Days of the Day tradition because my family came from northern Mexico. And in northern Mexico, there was a lot of racism against Indio folks. There was a lot of bias against poor people. And so parts of northern Mexico, they saw Days of the Dead as being a tradition of the poor and of Indians, of Indios. So they didn't lift it up. So it wasn't until I lived in the Bay Area and I was director of this Latino mental health center that I connected with the tradition. A couple of healer women from the community up there in Oakland said, Roberto, you got to come to our home for the Days of Dead celebration. And I go, well, tell me about it. So they told me about it, and I said, what do I bring? And they said, bring a photograph of someone that you want to honor, someone that you love. So I took a photo of my Mama Cuca. And I got there to the gathering, and they said, just find a place for her in the altar. I did that, and then I just found myself gosh, seeing how beautiful she was, remembering how beautiful she was to me. And then it was like all of a sudden, I felt her like speaking to me, saying, hey, ya de tiempo. It was about time you bring me to a Days of the Dead gathering. And I almost felt her, or I did feel her just tell me, Roberto, remember, I'm here for you. And so that evening, I made a connection with my Mama Cuca, my grandmother, where she became very much my spirit guide. And the work I did, it was like advocacy work. Sometimes I'd be going to Sacramento to provide testimony in terms of why a bill should be passed, or going to see the mayor advocating for services for our community. And sometimes when I knew it was going to be hard, I'd go to my Mama Cuca's photograph and say, Mama Cuca, I've got a hard one today. Be with me. Help me find the words. So that connection came out of the Days of Dead experience, of seeing her on the altar. So that's what you do, is you're inviting people to come to your home, invite them to bring a photo, and who knows what kind of magic may happen. So you invite folks to come over, visit, and then you take turns sharing story about the folks you want to remember. So as a facilitator, oftentimes you provide the welcome. So hey, thank you all for coming. Thank you for coming to share time with our altar space. And to begin, I'd like to share with a brief prayer. You know, thank you, Creator, for bringing us all together for this evening that we're going to share. Lift up the love so we just leave feeling more joy, more courage, more happiness, so we can make that happen in the world. So you share your opening words, and then you tell folks, look, our gathering is about remembering our loved ones, remembering the best of who they were, so we can take that forward. So there's 8 of us here. How about we all have, 3-4 minutes apiece, and we share who we want to talk about, and share their name, why you love them, and what was one of their gifts to you, and maybe how you want to take that gift forward. So in that case, oftentimes I'd say, hey, here's my brother Jack. He was an artist. His philosophy was create beauty in all that you do. Create beauty in all that you do. So for him, it wasn't just the paintings. Create beauty in the conversation you have with someone. He would very much visit old folks and just spend quality time with them and create beauty with that time. So in many ways, to honor my brother, that's why I'm a Days of Dead activist. I want other people to know this medicine. Another reason is that my brother was gay, and he died from AIDS. And at one point, I was one of the few Latinos with a doctorate in public health, and I was invited by the Latino AIDS Project in San Francisco to be their research director. And so I found myself interviewing just kind of the first generation of Latino young men who were courageously living and also courageously dying. They were HIV positive. And during that period, I connected with so many young folks, 22, 23, 24 years old, maybe they're in their early 20s, early 30s. And for them, it was like, one, you're regretting that you're going to die, but you're regretting that you're going to die young, and who's going to remember me? I haven't had enough time to do my thing, to create my fame, to make things happen. However, we connecting with the Days of Dead tradition, we said, we'll remember you in this way. We'll remember you in this way. So for a lot of young folks, it became a very important tradition, because now they knew that they would not be forgotten. Now they wanted their family to embrace the tradition, to remember them. So that's one of the reasons why I've been just an activist around this, because as a family therapist, I've seen its value for family. I've seen how it's healing. And then again, connecting with young folks who have been passing know how important it was to them. So again, going back to the gathering that you're going to have, is you invite people to share. As a facilitator, you invite people and say, hey, everyone has 4 or 5 minutes, but sometimes some people get long. I mean, here's their opportunity to tell a story, someone they love, it becomes long. So oftentimes, a facilitator, it's good to have maybe a rattle, so you can tell people, look, everybody has 4 minutes, and when they hear the rattle, that means you got 1 minute left. And that way, it doesn't feel so harsh to tell a person, look, you know what, you gotta quit your storytelling. And as a facilitator, you're kind of guiding the gathering, because somebody may just go to that place where there's tears. And so oftentimes it's real important to have tissue paper at your gathering. They're tears, but there's tears of remembrance. So sometimes you got to give people a little bit more time. Or maybe someone shares about a loved one, and then you say, for example, here, my tia Annie, she just oh, she just passed away 2 months ago. And so I might share about my tia Annie, and then as a facilitator, I'd say, okay, what do you appreciate about her, and how are you going to take it forward? So for Annie, I might say, I appreciate how she made everyone who ever went to her house feel so welcome. She just radiated love and created that welcome feeling. And so in honor of Annie, I'm going to try to do the same. Just ensure that everyone always feels welcome in my home. So that's what happens on this family gathering is people remember their loved ones, and then you invite them to say, what was your gift? How are you going to take it forward? And so everyone gets an opportunity to share. So it can happen within an hour. And some families, hey, it's going to take a couple hours. Because there's a lot of people that want to share, and the stories are a little bit longer. So there's been times where you begin the gathering, and then there's a facilitator who said, look, a few more people want to share, but we're getting hungry, so let's go eat and we'll come back. And usually when you schedule a meal around Days of the Dead, you try to have some of the foods that your loved ones enjoy. So oftentimes for our Days of the Dead gatherings, we'll have enchiladas or tacos, because hey, that's what we always enjoyed with my mom and dad when we were young. So again, you time it in a way that'll work for you and your group. And you got to be ready for what comes up, because someone may say, you know what, I kind of want to remember my dad, but I don't want to because he wasn't a very good person. And so I can't really think offhand what good I could say about him. So as a facilitator, you would say, well, look, still he was your dad. And so to maybe honor him, what lesson might you want to take forward? And this actually happened where this young man said, you know what? I want to be a great dad because my dad didn't know how to do it. I want to make sure I'm a great father. So now what he's taking forward is a commitment to be a good dad. So that's again the spirit of the gathering you want to have. You build your ofrenda, you build your altar space. And in building your altar space, it's preparing you, because you're just beginning to connect with the folks on the space. And then you invite those folks that need an invitation. And those are people you have at your home. You serve as a facilitator. You do the opening. And then you gather people and say, okay, it's time to share a story. Now, some good advice is that you don't do this by yourself. Ideally, you enlist one or two people to help you, because a lot of times families, they're hard to kind of corral and bring together. So, if you enlist your mother. One of the first gatherings I had, I said, Mom, you got to help me get people together. Or you ask your younger brother. So many times I ask my youngest brother, Arturo, hey, help me pull the group together. Or your good friends. But start with a small group that knows what's going to happen, so you support each other to have a good gathering. So again, as I said, typically you have this at your home. Oftentimes in our home here, it's a living room. Sometimes we've had it in the backyard, in the back space. It just feels right to have it outside. So I've been in gatherings where it's in the kitchen, it's in the living room, it's outside, it's whatever space works for you. Okay, here, now let me catch my breath. Okay, just a note, a number of people said, oh, I want to remember one of my students. She's profoundly disabled, only 13. I learned so much from her. I never want to forget her. Roberto, I want to remember my husband who passed away in January. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's what this is about, is your husband passed away too soon. Here's a tradition that honors him, respects him, because you're going to go and you're going to find those items that represent him, that you want on your altar space. And then you're going to find yourself chatting with him in a good way. Maybe sometimes with tears, but it's connecting with his spirit. In a lot of ways, I believe that's good for us on the physical side, and it's good for them the spirit side. I believe that sometimes when we talk to spirits, they hear us. So here, they're going to be hearing from you more. Someone here says, Thank you for inspiring and motivating me to create an altar to share with my grandchildren. Love the idea of telling them stories about their great grandparents, aunts, and uncles. Fantastic. That's what it's about, is sharing this, creating the time where we can share stories about our family, so children start developing a positive legacy of their family, because now they'll be learning some of the best about their families, because too often we don't talk about the good of our families, and time passes and people pass on. So with this tradition, we can use it to develop a positive family legacy where we create the opportunity to talk good about our families. Okay, someone says, my father of 87 years just passed away last Wednesday. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Share his name. Share with us his name. And it's so important to kind of say the names of the folks that you're going to be honoring. So if you like, continue sharing the name of the folk you want to honor and who they were, your brother, your friend, your cousin. Oh, okay. Someone says, you're great. Your grief is important and is worth celebrating. Thank you. Thank you. Carrie shared that idea. Your grief is worth celebrating. Very powerful concept. And that's what I find during this period is we find ourselves being so profound about lessons about death and life, because we don't have too many opportunities to talk about it in a good, healthy way. So during this period, it provides us the opportunity for this kind of sharing. And I have to share with you that this last week, I received a number of emails saying, Roberto, what you're doing is wrong. Days of the Dead is November 1st and 2nd. It's not a season. Well, again, I'm sharing this from an indigenous perspective tradition. It is a season. It's a period of time. So you don't have to have your altar up just for that 1-2 days. You start putting it up now so you can enjoy it for weeks. And believe me, you will. Once the altar's up and you see your loved ones there, you just want to continue seeing them together. Because here I get to see Cesar Chavez and the Justice Ruth together. Hey, let them connect now. I get to see my brother and my grandmother together, with my father and my aunt. Let them connect. So that altar space is for you, it's for them. I'll be honoring my Nana Celsa, who passed away this year. I continue to carry her name. Celsa, hey, so great to hear from you. Celsa lives up in the San Jose area, up north. Gosh, I didn't know she had passed. So again, yes, this way you remember her. Honoring my beloved mother, Lorenza Muniz, who passed away in June at the age of 95. She left us many great life lessons and awesome memories. Great. It takes me at least a week to put up my altar. Okay, this is from Tony. Yes, sometimes you just can't put it up. Actually, thank you, Tony. It takes a little bit of time. If you want to do this right, you're kind of meditating, you're doing your prayers, you're thinking of who you want to remember, then you got to go find their photographs. Then you might find their photographs and it's just on a piece of paper and say, you know what, they deserve a frame. Their photograph deserves a frame. So then you got to go get your frame to frame them so you can honor them a good way. So yes, making your altar takes a little bit of time, but make it a family experience where you bring the family together to look for the photographs, to frame them, to decide how to set up the altar. Okay, now before we get close to closing, I want to share with you, it's the time of the virus. So we can't oftentimes have a gathering at our house, but I want to share with you through this Zoom experience, you can create an altar space and have a Zoom gathering where you invite your family. We've now had several family gatherings for my wife's family and our family where we sent out the invitation for 12 folks and maybe 8 show up and some have to learn how to deal with Zoom, but they do. And then we'll take turns. I'll be the facilitator and I'll say, okay, Denise, you begin, you share. Hey, okay, time next. Okay, Rick, your turn. And you're the facilitator. So you facilitate by calling on each person doing the share. When I've already done about 3 Zoom gatherings for Days of the Dead this last week. and one was for folks throughout California. Actually, they were both for folks throughout California. And I asked everyone, look, just try to create a little altar space close to your Zoom station, and at least bring the photographs of those folks that you want to remember. And one of the gatherings, it was men who come from indigenous tradition. I said, hey, have your sage there, burn your sage, burn your candle. And we had a powerful gathering. So that's how you do the Zoom gathering, is you're the facilitator. Decide when you want to do it. On Zoom, you can get a license for free, so you can have a gathering for up to 45 minutes for as many people as you want. If it's longer, you got to pay for a license. But some people have said, look, Roberto, I've had them on for 45 minutes, and then we got to get off and we get back on. But the point is, you can create an experience where you can connect. Because I believe to some degree, you're feeling my energy because I'm feeling yours. I'm sending good energy out to you. I'm drawing from your good energy, and you're putting it in the chat. Here I read again. Honoring your loved ones by sharing stories about them, the most important part of the season. Life and death. Ometeo. It's our right and it's our way to honor our deceased ones. Me too. I'm watching this with my whole family. It's important to learn about our roots. Okay, a very important piece of wisdom I want to share with you is right now I'm sharing Dia de los Muertos from the tradition of the people of Olin. I belong to the people of Olin. We've been the walkers, travelers of Turtle Island here, this continent, from the beginning of time. I don't know my Coat tribe. I don't know my community in that way because of the European invasion. It disseminated so many of our communities. But I know I'm of the original peoples here. So that's a people of Olin, the people of movement. So I'm sharing it in this tradition. However, you know what? If you go back in time to so many traditions, the Irish, our African-American brothers and sisters, you go back to their indigenous times, they have very similar traditions. So I don't believe this is just ours to hold. I believe this is our tradition to share. So for me, this is very multicultural. I invite people from other cultures to learn from this tradition and use it. And over the years, I've done dozens and dozens of workshops where different folks, oftentimes white folks, Euro-American folks, say, you know what, my wife died. I want to remember her. Can I use this tradition? I say, absolutely yes. And I just ask you to remember, hey, we're brothers. I'm brown, you're white, but hey, let's support each other. So here's a way by which we can extend love to each other by sharing this tradition. Because a couple of emails I received also were, look, Roberto, you shouldn't perpetuate cultural appropriation, where people from one culture take the tradition of another. I feel in this context, this is medicine for healing. Our earth needs healing, our families need healing, our communities need healing. So let's share this healing energy, this healing tradition with each other. So I hear, thank you. Again, I'm honoring my mother who passed. I'm honoring my brother. Okay, yes, this is time for honoring. At this point, we have a little bit of time for some questions or some comments. Denise, I think you've been helping kind of reviewing the chat. Are there any particular questions you've seen that someone would like addressed?
Yes. So Roberto, a couple of questions about the significance of Pan de Muerto, and also how long do the food items stay on the altar? And afterwards, are they thrown away? Are they eaten? A question about that. So maybe you can address that first.
Okay, let's start with that one. Okay, oftentimes you put on the altar items that your loved one enjoyed because you're inviting them to come and you want to have something for them. So, for my father, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's apples and nuts. My dad, before he knew about organic eating, he would love just eating apples and nuts, and so I'll have that on the altar space. Other folks will have the favorite carton of cereals or their favorite beer or their favorite drink. So you put on the altar items that kind of remind you of your loved one, and that they might enjoy. So in terms of what you do afterwards, well, my dad, hey, he was a laborer, he was a hard worker, and so he'd say, hey, you know what? You eat that apple, you eat those nuts. So that's what I would do. With the flowers that are also on the altar, a lot of times we dry them up, and then we use them for other ceremonies and other times of the year. So the flowers, it's good to dry the petals to use for other ceremonies. Oftentimes, when we have a gathering where we're actually going to be eating together, we'll make a small plate for me and my brother. We might have one taco, a little bit of rice and beans. So they'll be in the altar for that evening. After that evening, we might go and just bury it outside. So I give it back to Mother Earth. So, you know, sometimes you're giving it back to Mother Earth. You might decide to eat it. I just think, see what your spirit tells you, what feels right.
So here's another question from Charles. What are your suggestions for those of us who are disconnected from our ancestors? For those of us who don't have memories of our ancestors for a wealth of reasons, how can we remember?
Okay. Well, I believe we all have culture. We all have culture. And for some of us, it's kind of connected to our color, our ethnicity. Others, it's connected to what's important to us. Because I believe there's a women activist culture that is strong and should get stronger. There's folks that love nature, and they see themselves as tree huggers, and that's great. So I believe in creating our own culture. So who are your heroes? Who's your heroes that have passed? Put them up on the altar. You know, what inspires you? Is it that shell at the ocean? Put that up on your altar. Hey, I connect to nature, connect to Mother Earth. Put that up on the altar. Kind of use this opportunity to create your own culture. What's important to you, and also again, I really think about who have been your heroes or heroines. And if you haven't thought about that before, I invite you to, because we all need those kind of teachers in our lives. So that's my thought in terms of, if you're struggling in terms of who is your culture, you know, give yourself license to create the culture you want to be. Be the person you want to be, make that your culture, and put things around you that nurture that.
So we have a question from Sonia and from Teresa asking about the significance in constructing the altar with 3 levels. Does each level represent something particular?
To tell you the truth, it escapes me. Early on, when I was first making altars, some folks said, oh, no, you must have 3 levels. But then later on, I was visiting other folks who said, no, you need 5 levels. And then I began to realize, especially when I went to Mexico, you know what, poor folks, hey, it was on a shelf. So I don't know the significance of the various levels. You go to different places in Mexico and they can give you an interpretation. And for me, the golden rule is create a space of beauty. You know, just put your artistic person into it, make it beautiful, and that'll work. And I've been in some people's places where their home was so small that they made an whole wall. They made the wall the altar. They kind of pinned people's photographs up and just hung papel picado. And I think Denise is going to tell you a little bit later about museum grab bags that they're going to have for folks. They're going to have some items to help you with their altar making, and papel picado is one of them. It's not hanging here in this office because it was too difficult. But I do want to tell you, at the back here, you see the Catrina, and that Catrina is like a door hanging where you can walk through it. And it was a gift to me from the community of Oakland for the different years I did Days of Dead ceremonies there. So for me, that's like it's an award. It was gifted to me by Josefina, who has this shop in Oakland called Corazon, and that's a main place in the Oakland area. If you're in the Bay Area, you need items for Dia de los Muertos, it's Corazon de Pueblo on International Boulevard.
So Roberto, 2 questions. Lizzie and Dolores are both curious, can they include a photograph of somebody who has passed that also includes somebody who is still alive. For example, a picture of my grandmother holding my daughter who is still alive. Is that okay?
I believe it is. Again, some people are dogmatic and say, no, it's got to be just a photo of the person. However, I have several photos of my grandmother, but this one's my favorite, and I'm there with her. But this one here captures her spirit so much that that's the photo I'll use. So I will include it, others in the photo. I think maybe it'd be ideal to have just the person. But and so there's been occasions where I actually will make a copy of the photograph and cut it and just have the person. So you got to kind of make your own judgment call on it.
Okay, here's a question from Eduardo. He would like to know, can you share how you've used Dia de los Muertos within a corporate setting? And also, can you share about the power of the talking stick to nurture authentic conversation?
All right. Okay. And you step away, get some medicine. Be right back. Okay. Well, Eduardo, I think, was with me when I did a Days of Dead gathering for Apple Computer, for Silicon Graphics, for Pacific Gas and Electric. So over the years, have done ceremonies in some corporate arenas, particularly for the Latinos who work within those various companies. And what Eduardo's speaking to is oftentimes we use a talking stick. So whoever holds the stick has the word, they do the sharing. So on those gatherings, oftentimes people didn't have an altar that they had created. So we'd say, okay, look, we're going to do sharing, honoring people we love. We have the talking stick here, or to be the stone. Whoever has a stone, you're responsible to share your truth. And so you get the stone, it's your opportunity to talk about the person you want to honor. So that's what was done several times within companies, within various organizations, is use a talking stick or a talking stone to facilitate the sharing. Thank you, Eduardo.
And we have several questions regarding whether, if this is not your cultural background, and I think they just want you to maybe, again, give permission that all cultures are welcome to celebrate in this way, asking that all cultures should be encouraged to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, and that you, whether you're Japanese
Okay.
American or Chinese American.
Right. Well, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, they've got their tradition is very parallel. Believe me, if you go back far enough in your roots, you'll find the tradition happening. In some parts of Africa, and I have one of these too, the tree. You hang different bottles on the tree representing different people that you love, and you'll put their name in there. So various folks have different ways of the practicing in different ways. For all those listening, I'm here. I'm extending you a blessing. So you have my blessing to create your altar in your way. If someone say anything to you about it, say, well, you know what, Roberto Vargas, Robert Canek, he does ceremony, and he said it was all right for me to do this if I'm respectful to spirit, and if I'm respectful to life, and if I'm respectful to the tradition of honoring all people, it is fine. Uh-oh. You know what? I think we're just about running out of time here.
So I'll take a couple minutes, Roberto, and talk about, before we turn it back over to you to close, I want to start.
Before,
Yeah.
I just got to make a quick
Sure.
commercial here. So before Denise shares some very important announcements. Okay. Again, you're invited. Okay, here. For folks here in the Ventura area, a great local resource for Dia de los Muertos supplies is La Catrina at 2338 East Main Street, Ventura. These are some of the items I just saw there the other day. Hey, I think we need to support our local businesses, and check her out and tell her Roberto sent you, so she knows that I threw a pitch for her. And Also, oh shoosh. You know what? I had one more slide that's not here. So I'm just going to give it to you, the announcement myself. But let me just turn this off. Okay. A number of folks have written to me asking, where can I read more about this? I've written a number of articles on portavida.org. portavida.org. It's my blog space. I've got articles there around Days of the Dead now. Also just around, hey, how should we be respectful of the folks, creating that battle, moving forward in terms of Black Lives Matter. So it's a blog that has my writings, which are about how do we create healing for ourselves, healing for Mother Earth, healing for our community. This is the kind of work I do. I facilitate ceremonies, I facilitate planning, I do leadership development. So if I could serve you, let me know. Again, check out portavida.org. And so Denise, it's yours.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to start by just thanking Roberto for his really thoughtful and inspiring presentation, to all of the members of the audience for participating, the museum's Latino Advisory Committee, and our generous sponsors. This weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we'll be distributing 800 craft bags that can be picked up at either the museum in downtown Ventura at 10 a.m. on Saturday, October 17th. It's a drive-through, so you'll just drive through our parking lot and we will have volunteers there giving you bags that have all of the crafts to make: papel picado, tissue paper marigolds, recipes for pan de muerto, Roberto's overview of how to create an altar in your home. You'll be able to pick up to 4 bags per family. On Sunday at noon in Santa Paula, we'll be doing the exact same thing in the parking lot just in front of the Agriculture Museum at 926 Railroad Avenue. And what we're asking from you in exchange for this gift of this presentation and these supplies is to create your altar at home and then send us the images. We would love to see what you're doing in your home. Send it, post it on our Facebook pages, email them to us at the museum at submissions@venturamuseum.org. And just know that if you want more information, we're going to be creating a community altar on site at the Ventura location October 26th through 30th. So it will be up the 31st through November 3rd. So if you are interested in submitting copies of your family photos, so we want you to keep the originals, but if you have copies that you want to add to our community altar, you can drop them off between noon and 3 on the 27th, 28th, and 29th of October. And then we'll be building the altar on October 30th. So it'll be available for people to come and visit the 31st through the 3rd. So that's my public service announcement. I'm going to turn it back over to Roberto at this time.
Okay, real good, folks. As I share with you, one of the intents this evening is to actually lift the vibration of love and respect. And so the way I like to close is I'd like everyone to put their hands to their heart. Hands to their heart. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a number of heart breaths. And we're going to extend love from our heart to everybody who's part of the community watching this gathering. So from your heart, extend it to your monitor, because in a lot of ways you're touching everybody who's part of this gathering. And so from the gathering, from the community, wanted to bring it back to your heart. So we're going to do this 3 times. So just imagine that everybody out there is smiling, and you're giving them some of your love. That includes you, Denise, right? And you're bringing that back to yourself. And so in a lot of ways, it's about being innovative. It's about being creative. It's about finding ways to extend the love out. There's just too much disrespect happening. And we got to create the energy of respect, of understanding, of love. And I trust every one of you that's out there, that's watching, is going to put together your gathering, your altar in such a way that you're lifting up this vibration of positivity, of healing, of honoring. So thank you so very much. I look forward to maybe seeing you pick up one of the grab bags, or just to see in the community, and let's stay in touch. Thank you so very much.